This is one of my beginner crochet series. Today we're going to learn how to do a very simple cotton washcloth. One of the more frustrating things about learning how to crochet is endless counting of stitches and making sure that your project, the sides, stay straight. So we're going to be learning a stitch called the lemon peel stitch, which alleviates a lot of that tedious counting. In fact, after you count out your starting chain, you probably don't need to count anymore. And if you do tend to make a mistake, it becomes really obvious. Now, crochet washcloths, the great thing about them, here's one of my finished ones right here, is they don't have to be perfect. They're washcloths. So if your sides aren't perfectly straight, so be it. It's still going to work just fine. And in fact, the stitch I'm going to show you today gives you kind of these nice little kind of like ruffled edges, which I actually kind of like. You can see I love making washcloths. In fact, they're still one of the best sellers in my shop. I give them as gifts all the time, and people seem to always really appreciate them. And the lemon peel stitch is this nice kind of textured stitch, and once you learn this makes a great scarves and baby blankets as well. And again, you don't have to do kind of that boring counting row after row, and helps you keep track of your stitch count really, really easily. And back in the olden days when I first learned to crochet, there was no internet, and I actually thought I invented this stitch. So, okay, a couple things that you're going to need. You're going to need a hook. A 5 or 5.5 millimeters, probably going to be just fine. It's better to go a little size higher when you're first starting than lower. Scissors, stitch markers, and I just use bobby pins. After 40, 50 years of crocheting, I still use bobby pins. Obviously, you're going to need some yarn, some nice cotton yarn, and this here I believe is Lily Sugar and Cream. There's also Peaches and Cream, Bernay, and Premier. All pretty readily available. They come in beautiful saturated colors. And I do find that the Premier cotton is a little easier to work with when you're starting out. It's a slicker cotton. And obviously you're going to need a crochet hook. Now, when you're crocheting with cotton, the hook actually really matters. Acrylic yarn is very slick and slides on and off of the hook really easily, but cotton tends to grab. And so you need a pretty slick higher end hook to work with. Now, most people when they're starting out to crochet have one of these, which are just great, especially for acrylic yarn, your traditional aluminum hook. You might even have something just a little low ender, which is these acrylic hooks, which actually I keep in my car. I travel with them all the time. You might even have a set of bamboo hooks or wood hooks. These are all fine, but they will be frustrating if you're working with cotton because, again, the cotton doesn't give and doesn't slide real easily. So you need a real slick surface. Now, I'm not affiliated with Clover in any way, but I have found that these hooks, and I have tried a lot of hooks, work the best on cotton out of all of these other kinds of brands. And I also recommend you have 2 size hooks. So if you're going to do the main body of your crochet with a 5 or a 5.5 millimeter, then you also want a 6 or a 6.5. And this is for your starting chain. When you're a beginner crocheter, it's really easy to make that starting chain just too tight, and it warps your project. So an easy way to fix this is just to have a slightly larger hook that you do your starting chain with, and then that's going to help loosen it up and keep your project from warping. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to use our larger hook, and you're going to take your yarn, and you're going to make a slip knot. Now, there's a lot of tutorials on how to do a slip knot. This is how I do mine, is, maybe if I do it this way, is I just cross it over, and then you insert your hook into the cross, and then you grab it where it's crossed, right here, okay? yarn over, and pull through. And then just choke it up. Okay, that's your slip knot. I'll just show you one more time. Cross your yarn, hold it, insert your hook, yarn over, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then pull it. Simple slip knot. Okay, so with your slip knot on there, you're going to take your other hand, your non-dominant hand, and you're going to weave your yarn through there. There's a lot of ways people do it. Sometimes they attach it around their pinky, sometimes they just wrap it around one finger like this. I tend to just go back and forth between my fingers. The only thing that you don't want to do, and it's a bad habit to start off with, is hold your yarn like this and use it to wrap around your hook. And the reason why you don't want to do this is because you'll basically, this action untwists the yarn. And you'll find that as you're working, your yarn starts to basically fall apart. So you might as well learn good habits right off, and you're going to learn how to use your hook to actually grab and loop the yarn. Now you can hold it. I have a knife hold, but some people have a pencil hold. Either one is fine. Again, just make sure you're using the hook to grab your yarn. So with your slip knot on there, hold the tail, yarn over, pull through, and that is a chain stitch. And for this pattern, for this washcloth, all we need is an even number of these. I tend to make them about 8 inches square. So that requires 22 starting chains, but if you want it larger or smaller, you can do 20, 18, 16, 24, just an even number, all right? So I've already got one on there, so it's 2, 3, 4, and then I re-choke up, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Notice my starting chain's kind of loose. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. So now we have our starting chain right here. And before we go on, I'm just going to show you real briefly the anatomy of a crochet chain, basic crochet chain. So actually, I'm going to put some white paper down here. It's just a little bit easier to see. I really need some white boards to work off of if I'm going to continue these videos. So if I hold this up, there's actually 2 sides to a crochet chain. On one side, you're going to see a V. There's going to be 2 strands, and they form a V. And the small part of the V is to where the starting chain was. And if I turn it over, this is the back side of the chain, and you'll see that there's only 1 strand that's poking up. This is actually called the back bump. And the back bump is really easy to see. If you turn it sideways, you can see why we call it the back bump, because it's a bump. So once you have your 22 chains, you're going to switch to your smaller hook. So you're done with the larger ones. You can put that away. And take your 5 or 5.5 millimeter, and you're going to slip that into your loop. And a good habit to get into is to work into those back bumps. So turn your chain over. And another really good habit is to go ahead and take a marker and mark that last full chain that you did. Not the loop that is on your hook, with the last chain that you did. It just makes it easier to find. Later on, after you get more experience, you're not going to have to do that anymore, but it really helps in the beginning. Now, the loop on your hook doesn't count as anything. The one that's marked here is 1, and this right here is your second one. And what you're going to do is you're going to yarn over, and you're going to go into that second, just the back bump right there, yarn over and pull through. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2. Now you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through the last 2. And now you're back to only having 1 on your hook. That is a double crochet. The next back bump, we're going to do a single crochet. So no yarn over, just go straight in, grab your yarn, pull through. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through those 2. And you're back to just 1 loop on your hook. Now we're going to go back to doing a double crochet. Yarn over, go through that back bump, grab your yarn, pull it through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 of them, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And now we do a single crochet. In fact, this whole time we're going to go back and forth between double and single. So single, there's no yarn over, you just go straight in, grab your yarn, pull it through, 2 loops on hook, grab your yarn, pull it through. And double crochet, yarn over, go through that back bump, grab your yarn. You should have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through last 2. Then a single crochet. Straight in, pull through, through. So you can rewind this part and replay it as many times as you need. I'm just going to keep going here to the end, and you can follow along with me. I'll try not to go too fast. I am a really fast crocheter, but I'll see you at the end. So double, single, double, single, double, and you'll see that we're almost at the end here. There should be 2 bumps left. And with the lemon peel stitch, which is alternating single and double crochets, with this pattern you will always end with a double. So if you've lost track or if you've messed up and that last one is a single, then you know that you've made a mistake somewhere. In this case, I just did a double, so I want to do a single and then a double into the last one. And that is your first row complete. And you can see that there's some texture to it when I turn it sideways, and that is the lemon peel stitch, just alternating single and double crochets. So to move on to the next row, you're going to chain 1, and that's going to count as your first stitch, so that's a single crochet. Turn it over, and if you look, you can kind of tell which is a single and which is a double. So, and if you pull on your yarn a little bit, you can usually tell the singles are going to have bigger holes in them because you didn't use as much yarn to make them. And the doubles have this little extra bump right here. So as you work back, a double is always going to go into that single from the row below, so double, and a single is always going to go into the double. So we did a single or chain 1 to start. we did a double, we did a single, and then we just again keep alternating double, single, double, single, keeping in mind that doubles are always worked into the single crochet of the row below, and singles are always worked into the double. So I'm going to continue on with this row, and I will see you at the end. You can crochet along with me if you like. Again, I'll try to go slow. Double, single, double, and this is where marking that stitch really helps. Because if you look at this, it's like, well, wait a minute, there's only one stitch left, and that's a single, but actually there's 2 stitches left. This was your first stitch from your chain, and this was your first double going back across. So we're going to put a single in this one. Oops. So we're going to put a single in this one. And if you have this marked, it's dummy proofs it. You don't have to think too hard about it, and you're going to put a double in that one. Now you're not really going to need to mark any more of your stitches unless you want to, because again, you're always going to be going back doing singles and doubles. So again, you just chain 1, that's going to count as a single, turn your work. And again, if you can't really see, your single is always going to have that wider hole. And so we start off with a double, then a single, then a double, then a single, all the way to the end. Like coming up to my end here, and I'm doing a double, then a single, and I have 1 more stitch left because I always end on a double crochet, and so it's got to go right in here. This is why I love this stitch for beginners, because it's so easy to miss stitches, especially on the ends, those turning chains. But with the lemon peel stitch, since you're always doing a single, double, you know that if you're always supposed to end on a double stitch. If you're not, then there's an error somewhere, there's a mistake, or you're not seeing that last stitch. Now, I'm just going to show you real quickly how to weave in ends. You just keep going back and forth on this for as long as you want. Usually, you know, I don't know, 18 rows is what I usually do, which tends to make it perfectly square. And when you're all done, you want to weave in that tail here. Now to weave in, you just grab your yarn needle and thread it through. And honestly, I'm a terrible threader. I see some people, they're so skilled at it, and I'm horrible at it. And when you're threading in your work tails, just keep in mind the magic of 3. You want to go back and forth 3 times. So just find a place to enter in through those stitches and kind of just go back and forth like this. Don't even have to go that far. That's 1. And find kind of a different place and go back to that same general area. That's 2. And then we're going to do it a 3rd time. So just kind of start in a different place and then weave it back through that same general area, and that's 3. That end is not going to come out. If you're really worried, you can do it a 4th time, but just trim it off and you're done. And soon you will have beautiful, wonderful washcloths in all kinds of different colors. And when you feel like you've mastered that, this stitch, because of its wonderful subtle texture to it, makes actually a wonderful baby blanket. and scarves. So you could just basically do the washcloth pattern and just keep going until it's the length of a scarf, or just make your starting chain a lot bigger and to make it about 30 inches by 30 inches. That's a nice size baby blanket. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll have more beginner videos for you, so please stay tuned to my channel. Thank you. Bye.